Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, hope you're doing well. Okay, firstly, I just want to quickly note that it's basically mid-July now, as of recording this video for week 12, and the Gold Coast Marathon has already taken place almost 2 weeks ago. Yes, I did end up racing it and ran fairly well enough, but I just want to say that although most of the videos in this series have been super delayed by many weeks for a good while now, ever since week 3 or week 4 I think, I'm still going to try to finish the series whenever I get the chance, so thanks for understanding. Anyways, let's do a quick recap of week 12 of the marathon train so far. Week 12 is also the first week of the 4-week race preparation train block. So Monday was just 10 kilometers of recovery on grass. It was a tiny bit slower than usual for a recovery run, but still felt mostly alright given I did the long run plus the Sydney 10 race on Sunday just the day before. Sometimes I do wonder if it's better to just like skip these 10-kilometer recovery runs after the usual big long run on Sundays. For now, it's not too bad since I do them on grass at a very relaxed effort, but we'll have to see I guess. Tuesday was some intervals around the Saltpan Creek Reserve. It was 5 by 600 meters with around 70 seconds of walk recovery. I decided to just do walk recovery this time, and it turns out I'm able to run a bit faster doing the intervals as a result. Part of me feels like there's probably no need for me to like run too quick for the intervals either, just in case I overcook myself, but I will continue to test jog versus walk or standing recoveries for a good while, especially across the various interval distances that I'll do for the rest of the program, and yeah, we'll have to see how it goes. Wednesday was the 24-kilometer medium long run around Saltpan Creek Reserve again. I scaled back the effort a little bit since I did intervals the day before, and I felt mostly okay throughout. I did have some higher heart rate readings for a good while between the 15 and 20 kilometer, which didn't seem like cadence lock this time. Maybe it's just due to the cold weather affecting the watch's operations, but I had a good feeling I wasn't running at 170 beats per minute effort, so yeah, I just ignored it. Plus it did stabilize itself after a while, so it's all good I guess. Thursday was 11k recovery run plus some speed work at the end, which was supposed to be 6 by 100 meter strides. I did about 10 kilometers of recovery on grass and then did the strides on pavement. I felt fairly solid here and would like to try strides or even like interval workouts on the grass one day, but it's kind of like a mixed bag due to the often wet and uneven grass these days. Friday was just 10 kilometers of recovery, again on grass. I think it's the first time in the 18 weeks of the train plan that there's like 2 recovery runs back to back, which sort of made sense because I was supposed to be doing a tune-up race the next day. Anyways, it went alright and I actually felt a tiny bit more refreshed because it wasn't like a medium long run or like a lactate threshold run for once. So Saturday was supposed to be my first tune-up race for the whole train plan, and it was supposed to be anything between like 8 to 15 kilometers. However, I couldn't find any local races scheduled that Saturday, so I just opted for the usual roads parkrun. Sometimes parkrun is pretty quick and competitive, but I'll be honest in saying that parkrun never feels like a true race to me personally. I often have too much fun and just take it too chill to get into like a true race spirit there, but it's definitely better than nothing I reckon. I guess to make things a bit interesting, I plan to do like a 5k solo time trial before the parkrun and then try to race the parkrun shortly after and see how my efforts compared. I was also keen to test out some new race shoes that I bought very recently. It was the Nike Vaporfly 3. I did manage to try a pair in person at Rebel Sport sometime last year, and while the general consensus is that it's a narrow shoe based on the reviews I've seen, it felt surprisingly comfy for me, even for my slightly wide feet, mostly because of its relaxed and high volume upper. I think it's definitely comfier but less aggressive feeling compared to the Vaporfly 2s that I've tried on a few times last year thanks to Mark, and some of these Vaporfly 3s were even more comfortable than my Saucony Endorphin Pro 3s, but that's probably due to sizing I guess. I will say that I did go like a half or maybe even like a full size up for my usual foot size, so it's not really a snug race fit like some people would prefer, but for me that makes it potentially usable for up to like the full marathon distance if things go well with it I guess. Anyways, I got to the roads parkrun location pretty early, like at around 7 AM, did like a warm-up for like around 30 minutes, which included like some jogging, dynamic movements, drills, strides and so on, and then I got straight into the solo time trial. I ended up finishing at about like 16:58 I think, which was a decent 5k PB for me, but I don't think I pushed as hard as I could have. It definitely feels a bit tricky to do like a time trial alone. Somehow it felt more like I was going around my 10k pace or a bit slower, but it's all good. The Vaporflies felt lightweight and nimble and very smooth and cruisy. I did get a bit of discomfort or like lace bite on my in ankles. The stock laces are kind of short, so I must have laced up too tightly from the start, but otherwise it's a super comfy fit for me personally, and maybe too roomy as well because it's almost like a full thumb's width in front of my toes to the end of the shoe. And then came the actual park run about 10 minutes later I think. At this point I wasn't feeling too tired, but I also wasn't really focused either. I ended up cruising for most of it and finishing like about 17:19, which is still pretty quick by my standards, although I think I had plenty left in the tank as well. Overall, I don't think it was too productive to do like a solo time trial and then try to race a park run after, but it's still nice to be able to like get some race experience while like testing my potential race shoes for the marathon race. But maybe next time I'll just do the park run only and see how it goes. And finally, Sunday was a 29-kilometer long run. I felt like revisiting the route to Glenfield that I did last in October along the Paramount to Liverpool rail trail since it's been a while, and to also extend a bit further as well and see where it takes me. It was also quite nice to see parts of the shared footpath between Cabramatta and Liverpool repaved or upgraded since then. It definitely makes the route a bit more accessible and more user-friendly. I ended up going about like 4 kilometers further from Glenfield this time, all the way to Ingleburn and passing through like Macquarie Fields. Overall, a solid long run and a pretty nice way to finish the week. Anyways, the total march for week 12 was about 115 kilometers. I was able to get like a 5k PB doing the solo time trial, though I do feel like I could have gone faster in a proper race, but it's all good. Whether I get like a 5k or 10k PB at this stage doesn't really affect my main goal of the marathon too much, since I still felt fairly fit for the most part. The following week, which is week 13, there'll be a final big long run with some gold marathon pace effort involved, so it'll be good to test the Vaporflies again and see how it goes. I wouldn't want to make the same mistake that I did last year by not testing my potential race shoe in at least one big long run prior to the race. Anyways, I want to quickly talk about my shoe rotation while training for the Gold Coast Marathon this year. Let's go through some of the new shoes that I bought towards the end of last year. Firstly, we have the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 2. I randomly saw it for quite cheap on Gumtree, so I just gave it a try. The fit is fairly narrow, but the upper is super comfy and hasn't given me any numb toes or like fit issues surprisingly. Even though there's a carbon plate in it, it's not that stiff and the shoe doesn't feel super quick or snappy by any means. I think I feel faster in my Rebels, but the traction of the outsole, which is like Puma grip, is just simply excellent in the rain. So I often reach for them on rainy days for like medium long runs and like speedy stuff like intervals, but otherwise they feel quite flat and firm normally, and I'd much rather use my speeds or pros on dry days. And then we have my Saucony Endorphin Speed 3, the red pair. I wanted to get a new pair to use alongside the old black pair, which was getting quite worn out. Once I got the red pair, I used them mainly for intervals, threshold, medium long runs and long runs. And then the black pair was relegated to like general aerobic runs and some shorter medium long runs. Towards the second half of the whole training, where the red speeds reached like around 700 kilometers of mileage, they felt somewhat decent, but just to be safe, I ended up just relegating them to like general aerobic and some shorter medium long runs as well. Let's quickly go through the shoes that I retired before starting the whole 18-week train block. Firstly, we have the Brooks Hyperion Tempo. I decided to retire them at the end of last year at around 450 kilometers of mileage in them, since I was getting a bit tired of getting like numb toes in them due to the fit being a bit short for me. I definitely should have gone at least half size up on them back then. It's kind of a shame since I really like the simple ride and how light it feels, but fortunately the black pair of speeds took over its duties. Then we have the New Balance Rebel V3, the black colorway one, and it was also my second pair of the two I have. I used it a lot last year for Sydney Marathon training, and by early this year it felt quite flat at just a bit over 700 kilometers of mileage in them, so I decided to just retire them just to be safe. Again, the black pair of speeds took over. Now let's go through some of the existing shoes in my rotation. Okay, so the first one's the Saucony Endorphin Speed 3, the black ones, the oldest pair I have. I ended up relegating them to the general aerobic and shorter medium long runs after the newer red pair of speeds took over, and then I finally ended up retiring them sometime in mid-June at like a bit over 1400 kilometers. Not because they were super flat or worn out by any means, or maybe they were, but I felt like I could still run in them, but it was mostly to be safe since it was the final weeks of training at that point before the race, and I didn't want to risk an injury, I guess. Then we have my Saucony Triumph 20s. I haven't used them for like the longest while, ever since training for the Sydney Marathon and not enjoying it and just putting it away, I guess. So I started using them again for whenever I do recovery runs on pavement, which tends to be at parkrun or rainy days where I don't feel like running on grass when it's like super wet. So I still don't enjoy running them too much, but they're somewhat bearable and they keep me at bay so I don't go too quick. Plus they're in fairly good condition with such low mileage in them, so yeah, I figured it'd be kind of waste not running them. Then we have the New Balance Rebel V3s, the white pair, which is like my first pair. I had lots of mileage in them already from last year's training, and it was feeling quite flat at around 700 kilometers before the start of the whole train block, so I decided to just relegate them to like recovery runs on grass where I'm not too fussed about feeling fast. Nowadays there's over 1000 kilometers of running mileage in them, with the good last 300 kilometers mostly on grass, and I feel like it should be okay for like a good while longer as long as I keep using it on grass, I think. Then we had the Saucony Endorphin Pro 3s. They were supposed to be my main race shoe from last year, which I used in the Sydney Marathon, but it didn't work out too well due to the sizing and fit, I guess. I felt bad for not using it much after the Sydney Marathon, so after playing around with the lacing a bit and like wearing thinner socks, somehow they fit and felt much better, so I started using them for like speedy workouts like intervals and threshold runs. And in terms of durability, I think they should last me a long while since they're very similar to the speeds anyway. And finally, let's go through some of the new shoes that I bought during the training for Gold Coast Marathon. So the first one is Saucony Endorphin Speed 3, which is like the white pair. It's also my third pair I have. I was looking for a new pair to use alongside the red pairs of speeds after it hit like 700 kilometers of mileage in them, so I got the white ones on sale. I used the white ones mostly for long runs, then eventually for some medium long runs as well towards the end of the chain block, just to like pamper the legs a bit and just to be safe, I guess. Then we have the Nike Vaporfly 3s. So as I mentioned earlier, I tried these in store at Rebel Sports a while ago and was surprised at how decent they fit and felt for like a narrow shoe and for someone with slightly wide feet, so I decided to get them for like a decent discount on like eBay. So far I've used them for like a couple of fast 5Ks and also like a massive gold marathon pace long run. It fits a bit long since I did size up on it, but I still really enjoy them since I didn't really get any like numb toe issues, although I was getting some like ankle lace bite issues, which I think I fixed some time ago, but I haven't had a chance to wear them again since then. Then finally we had the Saucony Endorphin Elite. So I was interested in this a while ago since I heard they're very accommodating in terms of fit, especially for like people with wide feet based on the reviews I've heard online, and I also confirmed myself after having tried them on in store at like Pace Athletic, but they're quite expensive at retail price, so I just never properly considered it. And then I randomly saw for like a very decent discount on eBay, so I just went for it. So doing a whole train for Gold Coast, I used them for maybe 2 long runs, a 10k race, a very short gold marathon pace run, which is part of like dress rehearsal, and then the actual marathon race itself. It felt quite solid doing the actual marathon race at Gold Coast, but I still had numb toes during the second half of the race, which is a shame, even with the fixed lacing and the thinner socks. I also got some very minor blister in ankle as well, which caused some bleeding, so I had to look into it later. But yeah, that's pretty much my shoe rotation while training for Gold Coast Marathon. Looking back, even though I ran fairly high mileage, I kind of feel like I have too many shoes in my rotation, especially the carbon plated race shoes. Even though this rotation worked fairly okay for me, I think later on I'll try to run in simpler shoes more often to build strength strength and not use the same or even like similar types of shoes too often throughout the week. It's also a bit tricky because we all have different foot profiles and preferences, so it can often be like a matter of like trial and error to find the shoes that suit us. And even with all the reviews you see online, and even after you try them in person, sometimes you won't know whether a shoe will like work well for you until a bunch of runs later. And even then, sometimes a particular discomfort may not appear until like a super long run or like a race, for example. Anyways, I'm definitely grateful for what I have, so I'll try to make the most out of them for a good while longer and just see how it goes. Feel free to let me know what your current shoe rotation is like, and even what you're looking to get later on. Feel free to let me know if you have any questions about my shoes as well. I'd be happy to help where I can. Other than that, thanks for watching and have a nice day. Bye.